Hi everyone, this is Isa Tees.
And this is Raphael, and welcome back to Relationships Done Different. Today, a really cool show. It's something that, when you think about it, is something that we face all the time. And it's, what do we do with feelings that we're afraid to express?
Well, you're pausing and looking at me like I'm supposed to know the answer to that.
Well, one of us better know.
Okay, we'll just make something up. This is a really, really important piece for us to look at because the majority of the people in the world either don't know what they're feeling or they know what they're feeling, but they're too afraid to really speak about what they're feeling, or they want to speak about what they're feeling, but they don't know how to do that. And granted, sometimes it's pretty difficult to do that when you are having feelings about someone that does not really have an open mind or an open heart or a willingness to really to listen to what it is you have to say, or even has any interest in what it is you have to say. So one of the things that a number one important thing is to be aware of how aware you are and how aware the other person is and where that other person functions from. Now, this might sound like it's complicated. It's like, no, this is way too much work.
There were a lot of awares in there.
There's a lot of, I know what we're wearing. In fact, we're wearing different clothes, different feelings, different whatever. So at any rate, what is powerful and important about this is that when we make a decision that we choose to have a broader peripheral vision, when we have a more all-encompassing awareness of what's going on around us, then we're not living in our own little closet and then wondering why there's nobody understanding us or nobody that we can feel safe with, or why there isn't anybody that we can communicate with. Because many times when people speak about what's going on with them, they speak with just either dancing around the bush, and they never really tell the truth because they're afraid of what kind of response or rejection they might receive, or else they are so blunt and brusque or difficult or sometimes abusive that the other person couldn't hear them if they even wanted them to, because whenever we have somebody speaking to us or acting in any way that's really harsh or threatening on any level, then there's going to be a shutdown. That's just what we do as human beings. We do not want to stand in front of the bullet if it's coming our way. So when we are speaking about what our subject is today, is what do we do with these feelings? The first thing, and you know what this is if you've been listening before, is to have this awareness. You have the awareness of what's going on inside of you. Your job isn't to perceive and decide what the other person is thinking, saying, feeling. You can pay attention to what they're doing, and you can pay attention to their body language when you're speaking to see how they're receiving what you're saying. But if you really want people to hear you, you have to be cognizant enough to know when they're able to hear what it is that you're saying or not. So that means you are number one responsible for your own awareness of yourself. And here's a tricky piece. What's wrapped around the feeling that you have going on there? Many times, well, let me give you an example. I was working with someone the other day, and they were looking at wanting to say something to their partner. And this person is usually pretty caustic, is the only word I can think of, with the way they speak what it is that's going on with themselves. You know, they don't sugarcoat it. They're not even conscious. They just take their own pain and suffering and boom, They smack it on the other person. And then they wonder why the other person doesn't speak to them for periods of time, or doesn't like them, or doesn't speak kindly back to them, or any of that. But that's a whole nother subject that we aren't going to talk about right this very second. What we are going to talk about is that when you are conscious, when you are aware, you are looking internally and you are recognizing your feelings. Now, once you recognize the feelings, you are most likely going to define it with some word. I'm so angry. I'm so hurt. I feel so betrayed. I feel whatever it is, if you can even get to the feeling stage, because many people don't even know the labels. They just know that they just feel whatever they feel, and they want to get rid of that feeling without even a label. But let's just go with, for this moment, that you label the feeling, which is pretty naturally done. So this person that I was working with was very, very enraged, really, really upset. Anger would be a soft word for this situation. And this person was not paying at all attention to what was going on with the other person, but rather they were just thinking about how they felt. And so they took that and they just dumped it on the other person by what most people do is criticizing, judging, making them wrong, making them feel little. You can't really make anybody feel anything, but utilizing words and energy that puts someone in a place of defensiveness, which immediately means you're wrong, you're not enough, you're not okay. And when that happens, people are just not open to really even work through anything that you may have going on. So this person says to to their partner, you made me do this, and it's your fault that this has occurred. And I want you to fix it because you're the one who really caused it in the first place. And I don't know how I got wrapped into this, and I'm not willing to do this. And so they're going back and forth with this, really unfun interchange. And so that's one way to handle your feelings. Just pull them up and throw them at somebody like a torch. And you'll find that when you do that, your conversation doesn't turn out to be very productive. In fact, most people go away feeling beat up, suppressed, depressed, and even more angry.
So I just want to say, last week we did our show on Are Your Judgments Getting the Best of Your Relationship? And we did speak about a lot of these triggers, the things that really take you from 0 to 100 on your reaction scale very quickly. And that is that's the number one piece here that has to be we have to be aware of. But you said something a minute ago I thought that was really that you started off with, and that is after you've gotten you know where your anger is, you know what's bothering you. The next important thing is to see what is if you can bring it together, is to determine what the hearability is of your partner. And that I thought was really, really important, because you could be as loving or as cranky as you want. Yes, okay. But if the other person is not going to hear you, or that will determine a whole bunch about how the way this conversation is going to go. So I was thinking that maybe you could speak a little more about this. It's kind of like an emotional intelligence of understanding where the other person is and what that person's ability to hear is.
Yes. Here's the thing. If you're listening to this, you are into personal development. If you're listening to this, you care about yourself, others, and life on some level, even if you think you're just passing the time by getting more intellectual information. But underneath that, if you don't consciously have the awareness, you do have a desire to be a more profound light in the world, a more profound, happy person, whatever word you want to use. And therefore, that means that you get to be the master in the situation. You get to be the lead person in the experience. What that means is that you take responsibility for noticing what's going on. You notice how you're feeling, and even though you may having this huge urge of rage that you want to like dump on somebody else, this is where you go, enough. And you might need to say that to yourself. And you stop yourself. And you stop yourself by taking 5 breaths. In through your nose, hold it to the count of 5, exhale slowly to the count of 5, and you interrupt your recycled program, which is, I feel bad, I'm going to give that bad feeling to somebody else. And as you're breathing, you can put out your sensors, if you will, and if you're in person with the other person, you can notice where they're at. Are they just like big-eyed and really enraged back? Are they standing there with their arms crossed? Are they about to cry? What kind of response are you seeing in their body? And when you have the desire to really have a very powerful interaction with someone, then you learn how to speak in a way that they can hear. Here's my experience. As most of you know, I have coached thousands of people. And what I have been in the midst of is people that just want to tell me off sometimes. They just aren't liking what it is that I'm saying. And that's okay with me because I have the ability and the conscious choice to determine how much they can hear and to what depth they can hear and how I can put together words that will allow them to hear something deep without feeling attacked. Let me tell you in advance, some people will feel attacked anyway because that's just where they are in. That's a place they're in, so they're stuck there and they think that everybody and everything is attacking them. But we're going to pretend for a moment that the person isn't in that extreme of a situation. So you're all welled up and you decide, okay, I can do this. And I mean, this all happens in nanoseconds. And the other person may just actually be dumping on you. And so you're internal and you are with your eyes open or closed. Usually they'll stay open. But at the same time, you're inside yourself and you're observing the person and you're seeing, wow, they are just like really losing it over there. It's irrelevant that maybe you said something that blew them off into that place of, radical overload. That's irrelevant right now. What you have to decide as the leader of the moment is, what do I want? Do I want some kind of resolution here? Do I want to be right? Do I want to be happy? Do I want to be one up on them? Do I want to show them that I've got it together, but they don't? When you know what the purpose of everything that comes out of your mouth is, you will totally understand yourself and life a gazillion times better.
That is so incredibly right on. That just gave me the chills when you said that, because every part of your communication is really based on that knowledge and that direction. It's like knowing how you're going to go, and you're not going to get diverted by somebody saying anything or whatever is pissing you off or whatever. That is so awesome. I am really, really excited about hearing that.
And I'm glad that you are, and I hope others were able to hear it at the depth that you heard it. Because what it is that I'm saying is that you are a profoundly capable person. You are a master of your mind, of your heart, of your thought processes, and every part of you. It's just that most of the time we don't know that until we do. So I'm here to tell you that you are, and with that, that means that you get to stay present to what is it that you want and what's your payoff for what it is that you're doing next. So before you open your mouth, maybe you started the whole thing with an attack on them, making them wrong, judging them, whatever. And so now they're in reaction, and all of a sudden it hits you, oh my gosh, look what I have just, poured a gallon of gasoline and I threw the match in there. So now what am I going to do? Okay, you breathe. You watch what the person's going through, and you realign to yourself. You realign to yourself by just breathing. It's not like some big ritual, or you don't have to go out and do a rain dance with your drum or anything. It's just a matter of being internally aware that you are choosing. You are choosing what happens next. So the person's over there giving you a whole lot of rhetoric about how they're feeling because they're off the reservation. They're not thinking. You, on the other hand, have gotten yourself into the center of yourself, and you're now asking yourself, what is my purpose here? What do I want out of this situation? Well, in the ideal world, you would say, I really want peace. I want to really come from a more loving place than I did at the beginning of this conversation. I want this person to be able to hear me, and I want them to feel heard. When you live your life with that kind of thought process and that kind of the way of being, if that's your way of being, your whole life is going to be completely different, and you will help shift other people's lives as well. So you are quiet, you're within, and you go, I really want to have this person feel like they're heard. I want them to feel safe, and I want the same thing for myself. And at that moment, you may not have a clue what to do. You may just be sitting there, well, I'm clear about what I want, but I don't know how to do that. There's a part of me that's still gurgling some. I'm just a little bit pissy.
But
still
isn't
in here.
it true that that you want some kind of resolution? Something got you angry, something got you mad, so that you don't want that situation to reoccur again. You want a resolution, if not. If you can get past, I need to be right this time, you want to make sure it doesn't happen in the future. So how do you deal with that?
Well, what you really want is to have that person make it all better. You want that person, unless you're extremely conscious, you want that person to say something, do something, be some way that you're going to feel like you are okay, and that what they did was wrong, so you can feel better. But that's a one-way street. One-way streets do not work in relationships. And remember, I'm not just speaking about a romantic relationship. I'm speaking about the voice you have going on in your head with yourself. I'm talking about your relationship with your parents, with your children, with your boss, with your friends. It doesn't matter. This is a generic communication issue that's important. So the core of who you are is deciding how you be. And if you are living in a state of abject terror, if you're living in a place of fear, then you're wanting somebody else to make you feel okay instead of being responsible for you being okay and you supporting what's going on and resolving itself in a way where, to use a coined phrase, everybody wins. Does that make sense?
Okay, I understand that.
So I don't remember what your question was. Was there a question there? Because before I go off on some other place.
Well, you answered it partly, but my question was, ultimately, we want resolution. We want resolution of a perceived problem, a perceived judgment, a perceived whatever that we think is wrong. And that's why the whole conversation started in the first place. So the awareness is obviously important. And the real question is, do we expecting the other person, and you just brought this up a moment ago, is it the other person who has to change, or is it you who has to change in your thinking and your perception, the way you're seeing it?
Absolutely, it has to be you that makes the change if you want your life to be different. Because as I've said many times, I have spent a whole bunch of years trying to get other people to be what I wanted them to be. And guess what? They never were, They still are not. And that's because I've finally recognized that this is my world, my perception, my reality, and I get to decide whether I want to be happy, sad, mad, or glad. Nobody can do anything to me. If I have a trigger, that's a personal issue because I have a belief system that something should be this way, and they're showing me that it's not the way that I think it ought to be, at least from their perception. And so, boom, we get into a real conflict. So when we're in the midst of this and you make a decision that you want to have things be more, you want resolution. Now, the kind of resolution you want is the next important thing to be thinking about. Do I want resolution by them getting down and being my doormat? Or what?
Apologizing.
Yeah, you want them to apologize. You want them
on
to say,
their knees.
I'll never do that again. Or do you want the kind of resolution where they realize that what they did is they were coming from the best place they knew how, and in that moment they may change it or they may not. And your job is to make a decision whether you're okay with that or you are not. You get to decide, because if they don't say, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean to do that, are you going to take that experience and ruin the rest of your day, the rest of your life, your relationship? What? What are you going to do with that? Because ultimately, it's about you deciding whether you want happiness or not. It's about you deciding if you think you're going to get everybody in your world, maybe on the planet, to think like you do and to make you feel like you're oh so wonderful. And I have a news bulletin. It will never happen. So if you want true happiness, which is really what this work is about, true core, inner innate happiness or innate joy, then you are the one who's going to get that by how you frame what it is that's going on in your life. Therefore, when you're with somebody who is really dumping on you, whether you started it or not, you have to make a decision about how you're going to perceive it. So I know that the title of this thing is, what do you do with these feelings? And I think we ought to get there. So what you do with these, you want to say something?
No, I'm used to it. It's okay.
Okay. So, and you didn't
We
think
start
I'd remember,
going
would
one
you?
place. Yeah, we start with a topic and we know where we want to go. But it's just kind of cool that we just go with whatever comes out, and it's we go with the energy of,
Well, we visit the neighborhood, and we go here and we go there, and then we get back on the freeway. So we're back on the freeway, and what it is that we're looking for here is what I'm speaking about here is one example. Another example, which I see very, very, very often, is, and it happens to be that it happens more with women than men, but I'm not saying it's exclusive by any means, and that is that they feel like a worm of the dust, and they will usually create a boss, a parent, a child, or a partner that will support them in their belief system. And how do they do that? They do that by judging them, making them wrong, belittling them, finding fault with them, whatever it is. And when you get to that place, usually the people that are in this place are terrified of speaking their truth. They're terrified to say what they really feel. And usually it's because their need to be loved is so huge that they will do whatever it takes to have somebody not be mad at them. Has that ever happened to you? Has that ever happened to those of you that are listening, to where you know that you wanted to say something, you just really wanted to smack that person or say something to them, but you didn't because you were afraid of what kind of results or what kind of reaction you would get? The reaction might be something like silence. That's one of the most aggressive ways that you can hurt someone, is by just not speaking to them. Another way, of course, is to verbally attack them. Another, of course, is to physically attack them. Another way is to really come at them with body language that you get in their space. I've seen this a lot. A guy might come up into a woman's face and just get right, like an inch from their face. And even if they don't talk, they stare them down, and they make faces that are very vile, very, some people would call evil. I mean, you don't, there's so much body language and so many words and all these things that can happen. And what happens to the person who is already intimidated and not living with their shoulders back and their chin up and their face to the sun, what they're doing is getting and shrinking, shrinking, shrinking. I was in a relationship once where the way I at the end of the relationship, what I realized is that when I'd met this person, I was like this bright, blooming, incredible flower. And by the end of the relationship, because I was this person that I'm speaking about right now, I was like a wilted flower that barely could even accept any kind of life. Really, really, really depressed energy, self-esteem, and everything else that goes along with that. There was no way in heck I was going to speak back to or up to someone because I had a lot of deep ingrained programs from parental stuff that just made it impossible for me to have the courage to do that at that time. So what do we do in a situation like that, you might ask?
Or even what I was thinking, and I just read an article about this where there was an ice skater who was sexually assaulted, but she was afraid to come forward because she was afraid of retaliation, both in her industry and being judged and all that kind of stuff. So it's the fear of retaliation as well. It's that if someone's on top of me in terms of a hierarchy or whatever, there's that constant fear that they can't do anything about it.
Right. That's right. They're afraid that they will lose their job, their position, their status. People won't believe them. They'll be judged because it's like women who are raped. A lot of times they won't even tell anybody because they're afraid, well, you probably brought that on.
So they're feeling powerless, basically.
Powerless is what we're really speaking about here.
So what do they do now?
So when you feel powerless, the thing to do is, first of all, understand that it takes empowerment to be able, and it takes courage and confidence to be able to come up to that. So the first step is to be very straightforward and very aware within yourself of how you feel. And how you feel is always going to come with labels. So I would write it down. I would write a letter to myself at first. Or you can write a letter to the person that you feel has, quote unquote, done something to you, or you feel intimidated by or abused by, and you write a letter to them and you say everything that's on your mind. I hate that this has happened. I resent you for this. All of the things that come out, no bars held. You absolutely say everything that's on your mind, how hurt you are, how you would just like to throttle them, or whatever it is, and get that out. Just get that out, and then be with it for a day, and then see if there's more in there. If there's more in there, then write it again, because it might come up, another whole layer might come up. You don't do anything with these letters. What you do is you write about it, you express it, and you are allowing yourself to release it. And after a while, what happens is there is virtually always a dissipation of the violence of the feelings within. And from there, what you can do is take those letters and burn them and just let that go away. Literally burn the letters and let it be released. And then you can sit down, which might be a day after that, and you can write a letter. And one of the letters that I've used a lot, which I love, is John Gray's love letter. You can Google it and find it, because it goes through 5 different steps of ways that you can write a letter. Doesn't mean you even have to send it to the person, but it's a very powerful thing to do. It's what I hate, what I love, what I resent, what I am sorry for, whatever. I don't remember the 5 things off the top of my head, but the bottom line is writing what the things are, and then coming down to the bottom, which is love. And what I love is this. And when you go through the whole cycle, you can bring yourself back to the love. Now, at that point, you maybe usually are feeling so much better internally that you got to get rid of this and you got to express it and you're feeling better internally. So based on that, a lot of times you don't have to do anything with those feelings. You don't have to go speak to the other person about it. You don't have to do anything with it. If there's something that's really still hanging on, then at that point, what's a great idea is to, when things are calm and not in activation, learn how to communicate. I can't remember if we've done any podcasts on conscious communication, but if we have, you all search for it and go back and get it. If not, send me an email and I'll do one on it right away quick, so you can have a better understanding of how to really communicate about what's on your mind that is not attacking, but rather in total and complete ownership. So you may know these couple little quick principles I'll give you. One is that you always use the word I and you give up the word you. You take full responsibility for what's going on. Instead of you make me feel this way, you say, when this occurs, I feel. And you always put it back on yourself, because the minute you start blaming, the minute that person's wall is going to come up and they just won't be available for you. It doesn't matter if they think they're quote unquote winning. It has nothing to do with anything. If they think that and that makes them be more open, yippee, who cares? You know who you are. You know who you are. And when you know who you are, you don't need anybody else to approve or not approve, to feel better, to feel less, to feel anything. They're doing what they're doing. You're over here knowing who you are. And that makes a very big difference in how you're going to be with yourself, others, and the whole world.
Okay, help me. We're actually running out of time for this segment, but help me with this, please. You want to know? We want to know who we are. We've gotten to the love, which I thought was another really great point, where you're actually sending love rather than throwing knives at them. So those are two very powerful things. But in the end, it's never about them. It's always about us. You've said that constantly. Mm-hmm. Reconcile how doing all the things that you just said, and basically, which has really dissipated your energy and all that. How do you get to the place of awareness that they didn't do anything and that ultimately it's your responsibility? And of course, everybody will probably go crazy when they hear that, but you've said it repeatedly, that it's always our responsibility. It's never about the other person.
There's a lot of depth to that question, meaning that
that's why I gave you 2 minutes to answer.
Thanks for the 30 seconds. What has to happen, or what usually happens for people to be able to get to the place where we feel so clear inside of ourselves that we know that we can take responsibility for what's going on, that takes a process. That's why I do all of the different things that I do. I have a year-long program. We're just completing one of our year-long programs, and all of the people in that have been in that for 3 straight years, and they've all signed up for the 4th one, which is about to start here in 2019, towards the end of the year. And what happens is that when you're exposed to and you entertain the possibilities of these core principles of life, what happens is that you start to etch away at the resistances and the kinds of thought processes that you've had before, and you literally exchange your old way of thinking for a new way of thinking, which is based on the love of self, the love of life, the love that allows you to really be in joy and happiness in your job, with your money, with your children. All of these things somehow just seem pretty darn awesome because you're living within at that core place. So I'm not saying you have to do a year-long program to get to this place. What I am saying is that you must find people that think differently. I call myself an out-of-the-box thinker, that you want to really be a different kind of person than the what I'll call the sheeple are. Sheeple meaning that everybody follows everybody's social consciousness and says whatever it is they say, and then you're supposed to fit into that pattern. That is just a bunch of stuff. I had a great, awesome connection and appointment with my personal trainer today, and we were talking about this and how we have the ability to determine how we want to be and how we want to frame what it is that's going on, and how we as a society, because she sees people like every day that come in and they have so many personal issues, they have self-esteem issues, they have confidence issues, they won't even go to the gym because they don't look good enough to go to the gym. And so this happens all of the time. It takes a personal mission inside yourself to rise above the way our society really grabs us by the neck and seemingly forces us to fall in to the tracks of everybody else. Step out of the box, people. Step out of the social consciousness that everybody has put together and decided, whoever the he or she was, that said this is the way it's supposed to be. What if you stepped back and you decided that your life was going to be your life? What if you didn't live for the approval of everybody else in the world, and that you made decisions based on what's true for you inside of yourself, your body, your mind, your spirit, the pieces of you that are crying for you being true to yourself and authentic, instead of what the whole frigging world is telling that you ought to be. But it's really hard to do if you don't have the support, which is why we are creating and have created a community, and we offer so many different things between this podcast and meetup and Saturday talks and programs and year-long programs and retreats and one-to-one coaching. All these things are to find whatever avenue works for somebody who wants something different, that is tired of the rat race, is tired of trying to keep up, is tired of the community, the competition, is just done with all that stuff. And when you want that, let me tell you, it comes forth. And just maybe today is the day for you. Maybe today's the day that you will say, enough. I'm all done with this.
And when it comes, based on what we just experienced at our concluding event on the last year-long program, it happens quickly. There's major transformation, and everyone's life seems to change dramatically.
Not seems to, it does. Yeah. Miracles happen. True miracles happen. I know, I'm just on a roll with it.
We could go on for an hour more, but we're a little constrained on time. And now we're going to go with the Ask E segment. And we have a question from Lauren, who lives in New Mexico. And she was talking, she said, I discussed your show last week with my partner, and our show once again was, are your judgments getting the best of your relationship? And she told him about some of her judgments, and he got really, really upset. So she's asking now, what do I do now?
Well, Lauren, first of all, most likely you were doing your best to express about your judgments, and my guess is pretty strong senses that you put it together in a way that, whether you meant to or not, had an energy or a word combination that implied blame, and that person is really not a good person, and that they've done something wrong and somehow they've hurt you, which makes you look like a victim and them look like an abuser on some level. That means that, first of all, if you come back to yourself and you learn your communication skills more profoundly, and you come back and maybe listen to this particular podcast again, that's going to be really helpful. One of the things that I would recommend is that you get our program, our relationship reboot program, because in there, Raphael, part of one of the programs in there is 12 plus 1 ways to
It's create or reignite your
your
perfect
relationship. So in there, we do an interchange of asking questions that will help take you deeper and help you better understand about what the real value and what the real purpose of relationship is. And there's 2 other programs in there that will help you better understand how to communicate and how to take responsibility for what's going on within yourself. When we talk about changing our life to the degree that we talk about it here, which is deep, comprehensive, and permanent, that means that you have to put your 2 cents worth in. It means that you have to have your commitment, your passion, your follow through, and your willingness to not always feel great. But guess what? You don't feel great anyway. So, Lauren, I acknowledge you for reaching out and doing the best that you could with that. And you will find that when you start to do some of the things actually that we spoke about today, you're going to find that your next communication will be a lot cleaner and a lot easier for you to speak and for the other person to hear. It's the judgments always come from within you. So Lauren, whatever judgments you saw in the other person are judgments that you have about yourself internally. And you may or may not be able to see them right now, but if you cannot and you'd like support, give me a call.
And I would just like to say that after you or when you master the points that were just talked about, you will find your relationship getting so much closer and so much more connected because he'll know what's on your mind. He will hopefully communicate back in a way that you will do the same, and the love will just flow between you because there's no hidden traps, there's no hidden stuffing, no stuff there that we've stuffed down.
Actually, what it is there's no cover up. You are the love. Love is just a pure, unadulterated energy that is not laced with a lot of emotions like most people think. It's a really pure level of consciousness where it's a fertile field where everything can spawn and everything is created. From that place, when you are not covering that up because of the game called life that we live here, when you take off layer after layer after layer after layer, what you see is that love, the essence of who you are, starts to expand and express. And from there, you can't help but find love with yourself and with other people. And that will help people's eyes, ears, and entire body cavity to be able to be more open to receiving what it is that you have to say because you're not coming at them with a sword.
And that's the magic of this work. It really is.
Yeah.
And we experience it pretty daily. I mean, sometimes we have issues that we tend to discuss with each other, but we always get back to that same place of openness and communication, and it'll just make every difference in the world for you.
And sometimes it takes a moment
or 2.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to move on now. We're going to get we're going to get to the part where E gives us our question for the day. Very powerful and I happen to know what the question is, so I know it's going to be pretty right on target with what we've been speaking about today.
So here's the question. What would it take for me to know and express my true feelings? What would it take for me to know and express my true feelings? Now, always remember to ask these as rhetorical questions. And I'm thinking, even as I'm saying this, that we might want to put a word in there that says safely or beautifully. So it's not a matter of taking those true feelings and just like, wow, like it is that we just spoke about, but rather, what would it take for me to know and express my true feelings lovingly or impeccably or
with love?
Yeah, lovingly, with love.
Yeah.
So I invite you to add that to the end because of the things that we just spoke about. It's not just about expressing them and dumping them. It's what would it take for me to know, remember that brings it back to you, to know and express my true feelings lovingly.
Okay, there you go. Well, we will be back next week. We're looking forward to it, and we hope you enjoyed this. Please give us comments below on our blog post. And if you have any specific topics, please let us know. Write to isatees@isatees.com. Or in addition, if you have any special requests for a show, we'd like to hear about that too.
isatees@isatees.com is my email address, and I would love to hear from you. And please share this with your friends. Post it on Facebook. Write and do whatever it is people do with these things often, a lot, because the more people that know about this kind of thinking, this kind of way of being, this way of living their life, the more profound your personal life and the lives of everyone else is going to be. Thank you for being here with us and being so open-minded and so open-hearted. And always remember that I am you, you are me, and we are one.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.